Today we're going to be talking about the philosophy of, well, it's probably more the philosophy of dualism than the philosophy of God and Satan. Um, we're going to touch on the ideas of, God and Satan. But really what we're trying to discuss is the idea that through the dualism of those two forces, I don't. We'll try to not be so reductive and simple as we continue. But through the uh, dualistic nature of those two forces, we gain the ability to have anything. We gain, a state of nature versus an idyllic form that is either completely good or completely evil, and in which case we have, I would say, probably nothing in true reality. So, what I mean by that is that it is through a state of difference that we can even recognize that we exist at all. And you might say, you as a person might want to live in a state of good and happiness, or whatever we want to try to attribute to the good, for your entire life. But what you don't recognize is that that state of negative, that second side of that dualistic reality, is in fact very, very much still going to be a part of your life, even if you live what you imagine is the good life all of the time. And what I mean by that is that you are still a human. You are still going to have faults and normal forms that are going to affect and disease you, as it were. So you definitely can feel within your own mind's eye that you are not going to always be in that state of only positive, if you are at least aware of it. And you certainly will be, if you live a state of what you imagine is good but is instead excess, your body will naturally respond in a negative fashion. So, but we're just trying to relatably say that, even within what you would imagine in your unaware and ignorant blissful state is, only the good, you would still have, the negative of life about you. You just wouldn't have as much, perhaps, as someone else that, doesn't have the amenities or the accoutrements that you might. Now, that was, kind of a little bit of a tangent, but, the idea is that without, and then we'll get philosophical for a moment, and we'll talk about, the Christian, story, and that is that, we have this character, God, and we have this other character, Satan, and they are, in, there's a couple of different versions of this. Who was that? That blind gentleman that wrote all of those books. He wrote Paradise Lost, and in it he describes John Milton, I believe. Okay, so in it he describes what he said was the talk between Satan and God. That was, the downfall of Satan, which was basically he challenged God into, saying that he was equal to him, and God was able to best him by saying that, he created, or how does he come to exist, and God, knows that he created him through, duality. And, Satan says that, he created himself. And God said, well, how did you do that? And Satan's not able to actually answer, correctly. Um, and of course, he would always have to exist in order for, the opposing factor to exist. So that would be the actual answer. And I've said that, before when talking about this basic philosophy of John Milton. But going back away from that and maybe going into, the biblical verse, let's talk about the idea of, so we've got this Satan character who leads a revolt. It's not, a revolt of philosophical ideas, but it's actually a revolt of, these third of the angels, we'll say, as it's, described. And, Satan, the most beautiful, is somehow upset because, and this is very strange because this is the Christian, because, it has to do with Christ. I don't know, maybe within the normal Abrahamic, that is to say the normal Jewish religion, it says the same thing about, the idea of the Savior. But so, we've got, Satan saying, hey, I'm the most beautiful and most wonderful angel. I'm actually your greatest creation. And God's like, no, I made this, creature Jesus over here. He's better than you. And Satan's kind of pissed off at that. And that's what ends up creating the fight that, makes Satan want to rebel. In theory. Or at least in the theory of the text. So, we have, Satan then rebelling. He fails, of course. And they are cast down into some kind of, pit. John Milton, I believe, again, describes it as, he, is cast down into this, fiery, I don't know if inferno is the right word. That's Dante's word for it. But so he's cast down into, this fiery pit, right? And then they make what was the name of the fortress that Satan ends up making in John Milton's Paradise Lost? It's some great name. It's not Calamity. It's something. It's a P, I think. I don't know. Maybe it'll come to me later. But it's a really funny name. And then Satan's like, literally talking to all of these. It's a very interesting, take on the story. Because Satan's now talking to all his generals and, gosh, what did they call it? It's not purgatory, and it's not the P. It's something else. It was, well. So it's talking to all his generals, and, then he says, well, I'm going to go off, and I'm going to go find this Earth. And then he flies off and tries to find Earth, and he's, like, flying through the void for this huge amount of time. And, and that's in theory, that's how, he comes to affect, the Earth people and, tries to fight, within the realm of them to, make God unhappy with that his creation, that he thinks is so wonderful is not. So that's the basic Christian, and I know probably a lot of people, maybe didn't even follow that because of the way I described it. I'm sorry, I know I know the story so much and so consistently. But even within, the ideal of, we'll just say we've got God up here, we've got a third of the angels fighting him. They end up losing, of course, first they have a smaller host, of fighters, and, second, they're fighting, the omniscient force versus, what they don't quite, have that level of omniscience. In theory, if you, again, from the text, if that's how you want to read it based on, how they wrote it. So, but then, we have, them cast down, and it's through, that calamity, not the word, again, that they use. Damn, I wish I could remember. It's such a funny name. So through that, we get all of the supposed ills, but really what I think is being said there is that there is some kind of middle ground that, above that middle ground. There is, a form that is higher, not higher in the sense that there's a power, but there is a form of yourself which is a higher form, and within that lower, cast down form is, a lesser form. And, but maybe not even a lesser form, maybe just a different form, and those differences are what really makes, the potential for there to be that middle ground or any ground at all, because otherwise you'll just have, a fascism of, a completeness of whichever, good or evil. And it could even be said that, God and Satan are in some kind of, cahoots, as it were. It's kind of a funny word to use for it, but they are in partnership against everyone else, not realizing that they are fighting. That the people who Satan had tricked, as it were, maybe they are tricked in real time, because he needed to create this secondary force, and it needed to happen in an organic way. But in fact, there is, a complete partnership between God and Satan, because Satan knows that he has to play this secondary role, or else, in a dualistic reality, there's nothing. There's literally... So, I think that there's definitely something to be said about that, that, you could definitely say in, some kind of a philosophical sense, at least in the Christian ideals, that, Satan can very well be a complete conspirator with God and not be against him. And that would be, and it's an interesting way to read it. And that's because, without the ideal of that, it's kind of an evil nature. I don't know if evil's the right word. Let's just say the negative versus the positive. Even though, but see, being negative could be very potential in some circumstances. If someone is about to stab you, if you shoot them before the knife hits you, it seems like you did a real negative thing, if we were to just say there was no knife involved and you just shot someone. But if you were to say, hey, someone almost cut me in the throat and I shot him, you'd be like, wow, good job. You did a good thing with your negative action. It's the reality. That's how reality works, is it not? So let's try and break away from that dualistic idea for a moment, and let's just go to some of the ideas that they kind of propose when they talk about God. So first off, we've got a very bad definition of God. God in a monotheistic thought is in monotheistic thought is conceived of as the supreme being, creator, and principal object of faith. God is usually conceived of as being omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, and omnibenevolent. I don't know about that last one. Where did they get that last one from? Where did that? Definitely not the Old Testament. As well as having an eternal and necessary existence. Okay, the omniscient, omnipresent, being eternal, necessary. See, when I think of God, I often like to think of forces, and that's why I like to, say the positive versus negative when we were even trying to talk about the philosophical ideas of the Christian, God versus Satan idea. God is most often held to be incorporeal. Yes and no. I would say that as a force, it's not incorporeal, but it is also not, conscious. It's more acting in this large series of events versus being a conscious ideal that is acting in response to a thought. If you are to have good or bad in your life, it's more related to a long series of interactions which occur, not related to a curse from some vile god or Satan, which Satan also, for what it's worth, the word means adversary, or it did in the biblical sense for a long period of time, and it was adopted to, mean not just the word adversary, but it meant the adversary of, God, and so, because Satan also is not a good descriptor for maybe the gods that were against the God of the Abrahamic religions. Things like Moloch Baal, things like who are the other gods that are really against the Abrahamic religions? Of course, it's not Lucifer. That's not right. Lucifer is the light bringer. That's not a actual devil. What are the devils? Gosh, I've got that Edgar Allan Poe book over there, and he's got some great, he's got a great list in one of them. I can't remember some of these names. They're the actual ones that they use in like Diablo. Diablo being one of them. Belial being a very strange god that was against the Abrahamic gods. And strange because we use so many things related to Belial still, like believe and belief. That's a very strange and scary thing to have Belial be so ingrained in the culture that we use the word belief, which is, has, its connotations and beginnings in Belial. Very strange. And for something so important, that is, belief. But that's because, it was made from the followers of Belial, forcing people to believe, things that were complete nonsense, basically. Well, if there were gods that were, affecting and doing things in the times, yeah, I've never seen it still. But see, even in that sense, the Abrahamic gods were not omnibenevolent. But also, monotheistic is not a great way to describe gods, because even within the monotheistic religions, there are a great deal of other gods. They aren't they're the one supreme God, as it were, Jehovah, not Jehovah, Hashem, or Yahweh. See, that says there's two names already, so there's two different gods, or at least two different sides of the same God, at the very least. And then there are supposed to be 72 names for God, something huge number of, names. So are those all different forms of the same God? Is that the one supreme God? Or are there actually a whole list of gods? And, maybe there is supposed to be one of them that holds supreme over the others. But really, I'd like to imagine more in the non-monotheistic, a polytheistic ideal, that there are a whole series of gods, and none of them exist anymore for what it's worth. Or I haven't seen them anyway. So, I can't necessarily say that I know anything about, like people used to, a couple thousand years ago, literally always, put food down for, their patron, gods that they would have on their shrines. It was such a consistency. And, some Indians still do that with, their gods and, images of them. But, I don't know. I just don't feel like those gods exist anymore. But maybe they just aren't praised correctly, and maybe they do exist, and you could actually interact with them in a real way. Maybe people do, and maybe that's why they're all going to church and raising their hands like they're on acid. I don't get it. When I saw that once or twice, myself, I was just like, what are you all doing? Are you all okay with yourselves? Like what's... I like that they're all praising God. I mean, that's nice, I guess. I just don't understand it because, from my perspective, we're all gods. and we all have, these high God tendencies within us, and so, or basically unascended gods, I think would be a good term for it. So I don't, I don't see when somebody's doing that. It just makes me feel like they're really disconnected with themselves if they are able to connect with something that, I, at least in some of the times I've seen it in one or two churches, it was odd. But whatever. I guess that's their thing. Just like many of these religions, you can see the religion of gosh, what was that movie? Is this the Holy Grail? Pretty sure it is. Monty Python, good old religion of Monty Python. Yeah, so you can see there's a lot of interesting things when they show gods, and also talking about polytheism. I like the ideals that the Greeks and the Romans used. Those ideals had a lot of sensible functions and realities within them. Um, you know, they even tried to have a supreme god, which was supposed to be Jupiter. After he deposed his father Cronus, but even he wasn't supreme. There was still fate and other things that were above him that he could never control. So I mean, there's something very strange in and that's why when I think of God, I really reel back and I say, well, wait, these are forces, because even if there were gods that had conscious minds, they probably couldn't control everything, and see there would still be that ideal of maybe fate and some other things going on. So some of the images for gods, a lot of different images from the Bhagavad Gita, it looks like. A lot of Hindu, a lot of Buddhist, got a couple Christian stuff in there. But see, the thing is that there's only so many Christian gods that are pictured, because there's an awful lot more non-Christian gods that have been encapsulated over the course of time in imagery anyway. This is interesting. So this image right here is actually Moses. He apparently had horns, which is very strange. And that is in the Bible, that Moses had grown horns. So, still keeping away from dualism, I think we're going to go over just the idea of Satan. Let's see what they say here for Satan. Also known as the devil. I think it should also be known as the adversary. The devil is not necessarily the adversary. Devils maybe were spoken of in the Key of Solomon, in his kind of workings into what was, I guess, essentially witchcraft. But I don't think that Satan was one of those devils. I think Satan is a separate word, which again means adversary, which was then developed into the idea of devil, or the devil, or the one. See, that's just it. When they say, he's the master of lies, or something. Well, there's different ones. I think it's like Belial that's the master of lies, and there's another one that's the master of deceit. There's a whole bunch of devils that were found by these people that when they were trying to, summon things. And this is again in the Key of Solomon. And by these people, I mean, the old Jews, in the time that the Old Testament was actually written and conducted. Because, I mean, obviously it must have been very old. Some of it. And maybe not, and maybe it was just all nonsense. Who knows? But it seems like, there's something to it, and probably should be studied if you're interested in the subject of, actual, devils, and trying to understand what the hell they were actually trying to, what the hell they're actually talking about. versus just the word Satan, which again means adversary and essentially means nothing. So, as in an entity in the Abrahamic religion that seduces humans into sin or falsehood. Yeah, I see. Who was it that was actually the name that John Milton used? Was it Satan? I think it might have been Satan. See, so he just uses the word adversary as, the adversary of God. It's not necessarily even his name. It's very strange. Huh. I'm kind of wrapped up on that, though, but... in Christianity and Islam, he is usually seen as either a fallen angel or a genie who used to possess great piety and beauty, but rebelled against God, who nevertheless allows him temporary power over the fallen world and a host of demons. Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about at least that last part when we're talking about the Christian doctrine, and that is that God is allowing him temporary power. What's so temporary about it? See, that's the other part, of dualism that people don't get. They think that somehow Satan is, if the idea is that Satan exists, and there doesn't even have to be evil. There can just be want and need, and you go out into the woods and a bear hasn't eaten for several, weeks, and he sees you and he fucking attacks and kills you. There's no evil in that, but that's definitely that negative force versus the positive force of, I don't know, I suppose your wife or something would be the opposite of that, incredibly negative force in, your life that you would hope would never occur, right? I don't know. There's something to be, said though that I don't believe in the traditional ideal of evil. I think that's a little bit jaded and simple. Like, these images are kind of a good showing of what I mean by how jaded and simple the idea of evil is. Okay, so first and foremost, let's look at this one right here. This is a great, great image. Why is this a good image? Not because it's a showing of, good versus evil, but in fact it's a really, really good showing of, kind of the tricks that have been played upon the minds of people in relation to the religion that they may or may not, espouse to have. Because here, like we discussed before, that image we saw was of Moses. Can we go back to that? It's somewhere up here, right? Here. This image here, that's Moses. That's the guy who led his people from the exodus of Egypt into the promised land. And yes, he wasn't allowed to go in himself. I don't really understand why he would be barred from it, but maybe does he die before they get there or something? I don't know. Anyway, point is, this is Moses. Those are his two horns. So if you threw horns on this guy, maybe then I'd say, okay, well, the rest of this imagery is okay. But the horns like show a obvious kind of disconnect from the past, an obvious distraction. This is talking about an obvious distraction. I'm distracted. Give me 1 second. I'm hearing something weird outside. Alright, sorry about that. So, just had myself a fun little time of chasing off a cat that's a piece of garbage. Um, so, um, where we were was basically, this idea is kind of, or this image right here is kind of a very strange, showing. Yeah, this is a strange showing because even in the sense of, a human form, there's no human being that's like, I want to make things all fiery and brimstone and burn everything down. Eventually, if you were to be, a crazy person that was just like that and you succeeded enough, eventually you'd have a bunch of things and you wouldn't want to just burn everything down. So, I mean, even evil doesn't necessarily want to have, a volcano versus the other side that's got a nice mountain top. That's kind of a strange view of, and see, the whole view of it is very weird. This is a very weird view of, what dualism is. This isn't what dualism is. Dualism is, this. It's this. It's the idea that, there's a yin and a yang. That, but it's not this. This is madness. Okay. Alright, so, I mean, also, the way that the devil has been, shown to look. Now, I don't know if there was ever descriptions made from the Key of Solomon, and that is to say, in the Key of Solomon, whether there are descriptions of devils and the way that they look individually. And the idea, too, of, being disturbed by the Baphomet, is like, I mean, a goat? I mean, really? That's like nothing. And also, the goat image, again, Moses, looks like a goat. He looks like a satyr of some kind. So, I mean, is that the image that they're trying to, relate back to? I don't know. And obviously it is on some levels all of the images of satyrs, all of the things related to paganism is why all of these images of devils with horns exist, because it was, those, people who they were trying to castigate, and not people who necessarily grew horns, but the pagans themselves. Yeah, this is 10 things that Satan can't do. Hallelujah.com. Oh my god. Holy shit, dude. This is such a weird view of adversarial, existence, the negative to the positive. You know, uh, it's not supposed to be this. It's not supposed to be these images. It's supposed to be that in order to get your food, you need to go and plant seeds. You need to work the soil. You need to do things in order to get the things that you want. It's that there is a negative to the positives of life. It's not necessarily that there's some kind of evil, satanic force that's out there. This is a great image though, right here. This is that's Dante's Inferno, I believe. Um, yeah, but that's more of a story. In the actual forces of what's occurring, and getting to a story, let's go over to the Watchers real quick. So here we have, I just looked up the word Watchers, but even within the first few, we have Nephilim demons. So somebody knows what we're talking about when we talk about the Watchers, and Watchers are a subclass of angels that were supposed to come down and watch over humans, basically as, maybe reporters, essentially. And then we have here Watcher's Angel. So we'll go here to Wikipedia because I think they'll have it very clearly. Watcher, Aramaic, something, something, huh? From the root awake, watchful. Those who are awake. Guard or watcher is a term used in connection with biblical angels. Watcher occurs in both plural and singular forms in the book of Daniel, where reference is made to their holiness. The apocryphal book of Enoch refers to both good and bad watchers with a primary focus on the rebellious ones. So, in the book of Daniel, there are 3 references to the class of watcher, holy one. The term is introduced by Nebuchadnezzar, who says he saw a watcher, a holy one, come down from heaven. He describes how his dream, the watcher says that Nebuchadnezzar will eat grass and be mad, and then this punishment is, by the decree of the watchers, the demand by the word of the holy ones. The living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men. After hearing the king's dream, Daniel considers for an hour and then responds. And because the king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump of its root in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze, in the tender grass of the field, and let him be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts of the field, till 7 periods of time pass over him. This is the interpretation, O king. It is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon my lord the king, that you shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. You shall be made to eat grass like an ox, and you shall be wet with the dew of heaven, and 7 periods of time shall pass over you till you know the Most High rules the kingdom of man and gives it to whom he will. What the hell did they just say there? Some very odd things, huh? Not much related to the Watchers, but gosh, just some odd stuff when you read some of the stranger books of the Bible. They're just freaking strange, man. I don't know how to make out what the hell they're trying for. All right, so let's go to the Book of Enoch here and see if they say anything more valid. The first book of Enoch devotes much of its attention to the fall of the Watchers. The second book of Enoch addresses the Watchers who are in the 5th heaven where the fall took place. The third book of Enoch gives attention to the unfallen Watchers. Alright, so the use of the term Watchers is common in the book of Enoch. Excuse me. The book of the Watchers occurs in the Aramaic fragment where the phrase Watchers and Holy Ones, a reference to Aramaic Daniel. Yeah, not much really to be said. You know, you got to go read the actual fucking Book of Enoch, huh? They don't have anything really much to be said about the Watchers. So, what I know about the Watchers is basically they're these set of angels that came down. Obviously, they turned into the Nephilim and turned into, you know, what we now see as the fallen angels, even though they are almost certainly unrelated to Satan and the initial rebellion that supposedly took place within. I don't know if that's in the ethos of the actual Bible or if that's in the ethos of just John Milne's Paradise Lost. If it is in the actual ethos of the Bible, then, you know, there's something, you know, to be said about that. But I would guess that these fallen angels are probably not in the same class as the angels that, you know, rebelled in the initial, you know, separation between heaven and, you know, hell, I suppose. It's a good way to describe it, I guess. Oh, it's Pandemonium. That's what the name of the fortress they built in hell was called. Pandemonium. So, I would say that what we're seeing here in, you know, the Book of Enoch, if you go and look into it, is going to be much more. Yeah, and they don't have anything about it here at all. But what you're going to find in the Book of Enoch is going to be You know, something that I don't think is related to the story of Satan and the fallen angels, you know, as it were, in that same context. When they talk about fallen angels, um, I don't know if this is really what they're referring to. See, this is the fall of Satan and the rebellion, but surely those weren't the watchers that God sent down to Earth. If we're working in the same ethos, right? I mean, surely those weren't the same angels that God sent down to Earth, right? So God sent down these other angels who ended up being a bunch of assholes, and they turned into, you know, the Nephilim. And the Nephilim is not the fallen angels from, you know, the initial rebellion. Just an interesting philosophical point, you know, to think about. Or it certainly doesn't seem like they should be. See, here it talks about the Book of Enoch and the mystery of the Watchers and the fallen angels, but, you know, this is an image that kind of is very relative to the image that we'll see of Satan if you were to look up Paradise Lost. So I think there's something, you know, very, very important to be said about that distinction, and maybe there is a huge distinction between that, and that is to say that, again, you know, there might be a real partnership between, you know, Satan and God, and the duality of the universe that is created through Satan's rebellion, you know, in this philosophical sense, versus the Watchers and the Nephilim, and their fall, you know, or the fallen angels of the Nephilim that we have in this kind of recorded biblical sense, that are probably just a bunch of assholes, you know. God sent down all these guys and he's like, hey, you guys are good guys, why don't you go down there? And they're like, hey, we're actually assholes. And they're like, hey, fucking assholes, now you gotta fucking kill everybody on Earth. And that's what the flood is, right? You know, it's the clearing out of all the Nephilim's genes. Talking about genes, we're gonna go to Genii real quick. And Genii is a very interesting term, because Genii, although it means genie, and funny how they don't have any showing. Ooh, what's this little creature here, huh? But anyway, there's no showing of genie when you type in Genii. Isn't that strange? That is very, very strange to me. So I guess we'll have to type in genie, see what we get. With a and that's what we're gonna get. We're gonna get a bunch of the genie from Aladdin. That's funny. Let's see what we get when we go to y'all. Okay, Genii is a pseudonym of American feral child. What? What? Okay, that's unrelated. What the fuck is that when you look up the word genie, that they've got this thing about this girl who was... What the fuck? Sure. Okay, so let's actually talk about what a genie is, or a genii is, and it's not what any of these things say. We're talking about jinn, I suppose. You know, but the fact is that, you know, there's a couple of different descriptions for genii, and jinn is one of them. So let's talk about, you know, a magic spirit believed to take human form and serve the person who calls it. And yeah, that's actually not a good descriptor either. They were essentially, you know, a series of, you know, the demons and forms of demons. I thought when I had it on Genii that it actually had a description that wasn't stupid somewhere. See, you can see that there is something like they know it. It's the Conjurer's magazine. They know what Genii is. Okay, so if we go to Wikipedia for Genii, a plural form of genie, a supernatural. No, it's not. It's not really the plural form. uh, in early pre-Islamic Arabian and later Islamic mythology and theology. Um, so, it's a plural form in the modern English, but I believe Genii is the actual, form that you would say when you're describing one of these creatures. So we're getting literally nothing about this, so it doesn't matter. We're not going to, gain anything by, well, all right. So they might have a little something on, but see, this is Jin, and yes, it's basically the same idea. I guess we need to, you need to actually say it as Jin, even though Genii is, what's okay. See, here's where I'm getting, discombobulated. Genii is how the Romans used to describe the master of the house that they would put on their shrine, and by master of the house I mean the main god that they would praise, worship, and so I'm getting that really confused because I believe that the ideal was supposed to be the same when we talk about Jin and when we talk about Genii in relation to the pre-Islamic, ideals of, these spirits or demons, as they put it here. Strange. So maybe Jin is a completely different form, and so what I'm referencing when I talk about Genii is not related to this kind of more heretical nonsense. I don't know. Maybe there's something to it. Let's just read it real quickly. I don't know very much about Jin, apart from some very simple, superficial understandings. They're supernatural creatures, pre-Islamic Arabian, later Islamic mythology and theology. Like humans, they're created with fitra, neither born as believers nor are unbelievers, but their attitude depends on whether they accept God's guidance. Okay, so maybe it is the same word being confused because it seems like it, and maybe the Islamic, theology is just allowed for more negative, genii or spirits or house spirits, to be, in control. I don't know. It's very, and so they were termed Jinn? I don't know. Therefore, Jinn are often mentioned together with devils and demons, and that's because collective designated for supernatural creature, blah, blah, blah. A lot of nonsense. Both devils and Jinn feature in folklore and are held responsible for misfortune, possession, and disease. However, the Jinn are sometimes supportive and benevolent. Okay, so, yeah, this just sounds like very, very normal. Like just a translation. Okay, well, who cares? So, I we could talk about dualism for a moment, but I was thinking, um, let's go and look at past. Listen, let's type in. Oh, this is not the right keyboard. Too many keyboards here for me, huh? Let's type in old gods and see what we come up with here. See if they show anything. Well, it's Warcraft. That's not very good. Is there a reason why this is all Warcraft related? Is that it's not really the Cthulhu mythos that we're looking for. Though it's kind of the same ideal. Yeah, I don't think we're going to find anything of value here. We probably might need to go look into Babylonia, and we'd have to look into Sumeria, and then we might be able to get a little bit more of the idea of what I was kind of going for with the old gods there. There are, potentially even false, relative gods. I am not sure about the Book of 50 Names. I'd like to do more research on it, but I don't understand the insignias, for it. Um, and trying to just talk about any other, interesting points when it has to do with gods. Let's see here. Yeah. Don't really can't really think of it. Well, so in the final, ideals here, we're gonna, try and wrap things up with, a final discussion with dualism. And so that final discussion on dualism is basically the idea that without a secondary form, without something to counterbalance your actions and I don't want to say form again. It's past just your form. It's something to counterbalance your spirit, I think would be a good way to say it. You need something to actually be as a counterbalance to the, and not just your spirit, but the spirit of all things. Because if anything was to be so overwhelmingly, in control, then everything would grow entirely out of bounds. I mean, you can imagine something that just, I'm trying to think of things like, simple CO2, I don't know why these are making me think of, oxygen and carbon atoms, but thinking of, something that, could potentially like make or replicate itself incredibly quickly, based on the levels of CO2, and, how easily, things could grow out of hand, and you would have this massive oxygen, bloom that could cause problems, or something. I'm just imagining how easily, without things being, within a balanced state, and that's including, a grand amount of death that occurs when you overdo or you have excesses of something. And balance is the only way to make it so that those excesses don't occur in real time. So, I mean, there was a really simple simulation back in the 90s. And it was, something that they gave, middle school kids to show them the basic ideas of balance and how things actually worked in reality. And it was a 3-part simulation. And those parts were grass, a deer, and wolves. Not a deer, but deer in general. And wolves in general, many, not just one, as I'm trying to express it. And so over the course of this, I believe they were on an island space so that it wasn't, a literal infinite space. But over the course of time, you could see that if there was too much grass that grew, that the deer would overeat, and that when the deer would overeat, there would be less grass, and then when there weren't many wolves, because there had been a less deer to hunt, then, once there were that overabundance of deer, then the wolves would start eating them, and their numbers would grow, and then the deer's numbers would shrink naturally, and the grass would start growing in huge amounts again after all of the wolves starved out, except for a small amount of them that were still able to hunt some of the deer. And of course, if the wolves caught all of the deer, then they would end up starving to death because there would be no more deer to reproduce. So all of it was this interesting showing of how these things balance each other out, and how if the deer end up dying off, so there's less of them, then there's more grass, so it's easier for the other deer to actually grow. And likewise, once there's a larger abundance of deer in general, then there's less wolves that'll end up starving, and you'll end up having more of them end up catching the deer, versus the opposite, which is to have them just die. And, it was a very interesting showing of how, simple balance is, or how important balance is to make it so that there is something that actually exists in space. And that isn't even a dualistic space. That has, three properties, which is even more interesting to kind of recognize that some of these creatures can't live on the grass, so they have to eat the deer, and the deer have to eat the grass. So if they overeat the grass, then they can't exist anymore because there's no grass to eat, so they'll die too. But then, of course, the wolves can eat the deer carcasses, and once there's more grass, the remaining deer, blah, 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 and the cycle goes on endlessly. And likewise, when we get into just simple dualism, we say, without, the good of, something, or actually without the evil of something, we can't really recognize the good. We can't recognize that without having someone be mean to us, we can't recognize that someone was ever even nice to us. We don't even notice. We don't realize that they've been nice to us this entire time until we see someone else that's actually mean to us. And we say, oh, so this other person, they actually are a nice person, and I would never have known because they are never mean. They're literally never mean, so I could never know. And this is, again, from a very childish perspective where you've never even interacted with a mean person. Very, very simple terminology, but still, the ideal is that, if you have never interacted with someone that you would classify as mean, then you don't realize how nice everybody's been to you all your life. And that's where you get these spoiled brats that basically, they're yelling and screaming about how they want more of everything, but really they've had so much of everything and don't even realize it. And, that is, a necessary truth, I feel like. But, at the same time, there's something to be said about always having that good life and not having to have that dualistic problem where you realize that, people can be awful and cruel and mean or evil, But at the same time, you grow a lot more when you are in a state of distress and trying to learn things and trying to make things, better than you do when everything is just simple and wonderful. Now, having said that, would I, as a person, prefer everything to be simple and wonderful all the time? Yeah. That would definitely be my preference. But, that hasn't been my, state of being, and I'm much more grateful for the things I have because I have had that dualistic perspective of having, less and having more, and being able to say, okay, well, and having people that have been good and bad to me and say, okay, well, wait a second, I actually understand this a little bit more now. And I understand that, this person's actually kind of, cruel and mean and unjustified. And, it's important to see that from that, dualistic perspective where initially you just are, everybody's kind of just being nice and just, it seems like everybody's nice, so you don't even know what mean is. Yeah, that's the other thing. If everyone's mean to you, but you don't really realize it, then you're never even going to realize that, I've said it twice, but you aren't, you literally won't understand the fact that you are being mistreated until later when you aren't mistreated, and then you'll say, wait a second, I was being mistreated that whole time? It's very, very odd, but then again, we accept what we accept, we decide what we think is right, and, we justify our actions, I suppose, and so that's a problem with the human form versus, the forces that, make up our reality, which are, much more of what we're talking about, these strange kind of dualistic, forces of good and, not necessarily, I don't like good and evil. It's more positive and negative of, here's a great one. I had to dig a water line for my house, and it like destroyed my back for like 7 days or more, maybe a few weeks, and my back still is like kind of messed up. But I had to do it, or else I wouldn't have had water for the winter, and I wouldn't have. It would have been a real hell of a problem. Um, and so I had to take that massive, negative, pain to get, that done. Uh, and it's a massive positive. It has been, but I should have done it in a different way, I'm sure. But it turned out it was a bad situation in essence. When I had to get it done, it started snowing, blah blah blah. So the thing is that in in life you're going to get into these I can say that about 3 or 4 more times. You get in these situations where you're going to finally realize the dualistic reality of nature, and you're going to say, okay, well, I can deal with this, or I can't. Maybe you're real weak and you're going to just die and fail, or maybe like me, you won't die and fail, but you will, your body might. And that happens too. But yeah, I don't know if you do know, because I'm having to say too many times. Eventually, everyone will get into gosh, if I say one more time, I'm just gonna smack my head, and there it is. Uh, so I think we got to wrap it up, because I don't know how to say words without saying But anyway, I'm gonna get upset at myself. That's hilarious. Um, so wrapping up on dualism, basically, without the ideal of Satan, you're not going to have a heaven or a God form, or good or anything. Without the idea of a negative, you can't have a positive. Without the ideal of some kind of adversary, that ideal of Satan. Without that adversary, you don't have anything to fight against to make it so that you're a better person, I guess. I'm not really sure what the intent is, because I don't really get into that thought process personally. But I mean, even then, you should say, okay, well, you could you can make it this simple. You could say, okay, well, that I'm that God creature, and that adversary is winter, and Satan's sending all of this snow, and I've got to deal with all this snow, and I've got to shovel, and I've got to blah blah blah, and that's Satan, and I mean, I guess you could say you could just apply it to any adversary and try to make it ethereal, so that you make everything kind of more special and exciting in your mind and in your world. I guess you could do that. I guess. I don't know. I kind of see it again in that dualistic nature that, all of this or all the water that'll come from all the snowpack is a really great thing, and I'll have all of the plants around here will grow in a much stronger form. It's not a bad thing. So, somebody might in their in an insane mind's eye, take that crazy adversary approach to that, though, and say, no, it's Satan that sent all of this snow, and that's why he's trying to freeze me to death, and I'm not. It's not like I'm the dumb one who's living up on a mountainside where all the snow falls. It's none of that's brought into consideration. So and there's positives and negatives. Again, it's a positive negative thing. There's great reasons why this area is better because of all of the snowpack and whatnot, and there's really great reasons why it would be better not to have it around for several months as well, because then you could walk around and not have it be an issue. So that's the real thing. That's the real end ideal, I guess I want to say, is that God and Satan are the idyllic attempt to make this dualistic argument for the world. And it's not a bad argument, and it makes sense. It's a functional argument. It's the way that someone should idealize the world, that you don't get everything good no matter what happens. There is bad with the good, and you can see, if you see the good in something that is currently a burden, then you can understand why there is, or how the dualistic nature of reality exists. And again, I'm going to just say the simplest, analogy is that, when it snows on a mountainside and there's a bunch of snowpack, and, over the course of the spring, it'll start to, drain out, and you have rivers and stuff, versus if there's no snowpack, then there's no rivers, there's less wildlife, there's less everything. So, yes, it can be a real burden to have to, clear snow, but it can be an incredible joy to have, the huge amounts of wildlife and growth. So, that's the same massive ideal that's tried to be applied to, the Christian theology today. With that being said, I think we're going to go ahead and cut it here. Nothing really much more to be said. I could say, a few more thousand times. I think I should go count it up and, and be impressed by how many times I'm able to say the same words, as if I'm saying or or something, to just give myself a few seconds to think. That's what I think it's happening. I think I'm just too stupid, can't think fast enough, so I've got to say every 5 seconds. All right, so I'm going to call it here. It's been a good episode all the same. This is a very, very basic philosophy, I think. Though some people would scoff at the idea, and this is the only thing that maybe we said that's kind of interesting throughout this, that I would say is interesting anyway, is the idea that God and, Satan could be in a partnership where he, essentially did this, rebellion to help out, God in his, attempt to make something exist. Because without it, you can't have dualism. You can't have anything if you don't have something. So, I would have to say that that's probably, the best thing to end on, is that, even in the craziest of theologies where Satan is this endless adversary to God, you can still see how Satan would or could be the essential, tool of God to make it so that reality worked. And, the same could be said for, Judas in the Christian, theology, with Christ saying, hey, you got to turn me in, and Judas saying, no, I don't want to do that. And did Judas then hang himself actually because he knew they were going to come and kill him too? Or did he hang himself because he was really upset that Christ made him turn him in? Or how did that work? I don't understand that either. That's so strange, because that Christ was like, hey, you need to go turn me in. It's not like Judas did it. Everything, in the Bible shows that Judas was like his best friend. So it's just crazy horse shit. And obviously it's a partnership of, the good and evil, didn't end well for Judas, obviously. He was quite upset about the fact that he was forced to do that. I think that's how it seems to be played. Versus, Satan, who's, I guess, got a little bit more of a resounding thing. Because, God didn't end up dying in the rebellion, right? Or maybe Satan would have gotten upset, huh? But because it was all just a play for them, or that's what I feel like, is that it was all just a big play. And after the play was done, they're still playing it. Actually, there's no play, there's no end to the play being done. There's just, I guess after the play of the rebellion was done, Satan went down and he was like, all right, well, now we're hanging out here and we're doing stuff here. And all the angels were just like, okay. And yeah, I guess they did say that, because they all are even lower in rank and have no fucking clue what's going on, so they just listen, So sure, why not? And, it very well may be that, all of those deceitful and terrible things that are kind of outlined in Paradise Lost by John Milne when he's describing all the different devils, that maybe those, forms that, maybe are even also in the Key of Solomon, and have been said in some of these Edgar Allan Poe things that I'm referencing, even if all of those, feelings and actions and forms of, people are real, and that's like the separation ideal of good and evil, is that, maybe deceit is actually an evil act, and maybe lying is actually an evil act, or, maybe that can be said, that those are, the supposed gods or forces that followed Satan. It all gets into the weeds of philosophy again then. But, the basic ideal I think that should be taken away is that it very well could have been a asked upon job from God to Satan. It was like, hey bud, I need you to find out who's kind of an asshole around here. So you're gonna go around everybody and say, hey, I don't like God, and we're gonna fight him and find out who's up for it, and then whoever's up for it, I'm gonna send you all somewhere else so you guys can kind of hang out together, so you don't have to deal with me. And he's like, all right, yeah, sounds good. I'll do it for you, buddy. And, literally that's what I feel like happened. And then Satan goes and he's like in charge of all of these, demons over here. And he's like, yeah, I'm good. We're doing this because, God asked me to do this. Very strange story, though. But that seems like what's actually happening there. Because otherwise, you wouldn't have him described as the most beautiful and the brightest of angels and blah 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 blah, only to have him fall. It's stupid. It's a stupid form. It's the same thing as Judas, where they're trying to say, oh no, Judas betrayed him. Yeah, except for literally there's like only passages of how Judas and Jesus were best of friends, and how Judas was the one person that Jesus trusted with his confidences, so he probably told him to go do what he did. So fuck you. Yeah, it's stupid. It's the same kind of ideal when you talk about the God Satan parallel. All right, so having said that, I don't think I said 1,000 times in the last 5 minutes. There was a couple, but I'm gonna try to slow it down, and if I did, well, got a couple more to click on to the old clicker there. So that's been another good one. I think that was a good little wrap up there. This has been, another Pilfered Pyramid podcast, and I'm Samuel Mittler. Have a good day, and thanks for watching.